Benvenuti, bentornati. It's time for the calcio, and we're starting where else but in the San Siro on a sunny Sunday afternoon. Inter nil, Roma 1. And all I can say is, after the game, Tommy just messaged me saying, why? Just one word, why? I think he was really suffering watching that game. We've been talking a lot across this season about how Inter could have, they were going for the triplete day. It was looking good. But Adam, it has dropped so quickly. It looks so desperate, so lost, and just really tired.
Yeah, I think we kind of called out a number of times on this podcast about the depth and potentially the rotation from Inzaghi. But we've noticed also that kind of drop off from when Inzaghi does kind of rotate. On this occasion, I would say, Rory, they tried their best, and that's something Inzaghi alluded to, the fact that there was a lot of heart, but unfortunately they just couldn't get that quality. But yeah, it does feel like, recent weeks have just taken its toll. The defeat in the Coppa Italia against city rivals Milan and losing that semi-final tie has kind of started the kind of domino effects, it's fair to say. It's taken its toll. We've got injuries even in this match with the likes of Benjamin Pavard. And it just feels like the season is just going to go down to the wire in terms of what can they rescue now, in terms of, is it the Scudetto? Is it they concentrate on the Champions League, for example? But yeah, unfortunately, for all their might, it just didn't feel like it was going to come to them. It just felt like Roma were comfortable in their defensive duties. They were resolute, resilient, gritty, I would describe that performance, and Svila in that goal. A magnificent performance from him. Absolutely epic. But, I mean, Roma just looked good on the counter-attack, didn't they, Roy? I felt that was their game plan. They weren't going to compete on the same levels as Inter. But yeah, I mean, how did you see the game itself? Because it felt to me like there was still some tiredness within those legs. And should there be some serious questions about Inzaghi at this stage?
I'm going to nip that in the bud and say no completely. I'll get back to that. But I think any Inter fan that's calling for him to be sacked, I think you've got rocks in your head, honestly. But I think I always thought, with this game, that Inter would need to get an early goal. They would have to get an early goal because we know they are lacking the quality from players like Thuram not being able to play, and like the amount of injuries they've got. This was Dumfries coming back as well. Like, it was his first game back. So we know that the quality hasn't quite been there. So I thought, with the miles or kilometres that have been in those legs, they need an early goal to get Roma quiet. Don't give them anything. And then you can just see the game out. You can manage the game. And even though defensively Inter haven't been the most solid, especially from set pieces, I felt like if they got an early goal, the San Siro could just get them the win over the line. But the second Roma got that goal, I was like, okay, now we're going to find out what Inter are like. And knowing Pazza Inter and how it always is, I thought they're not getting back into this now. And throughout the game, there was only 4 or 5 chances, maybe 4 or 5 times where I was like, where it felt like it was going to go in. But even then, every time it was just a cross to the back post and hoping that Dumfries could run on and get it. And I felt like if you've got defenders like Mancini, they're gonna lap up heading the ball away all day. Like, you're playing right into their hands. And I think it's something we've accused Inter of in the past as well, is like having that other option, having a player that can beat a man, having that player that can run into the box and not because it felt like it was just ball into the box, ball into the box, ball into the box. And when that didn't work, ball into the box. And it was it reminded me weirdly of when Real Madrid played Arsenal. And it's kind of, you can see the team running out of ideas, and all the wing backs, all the wingers are doing at that point is going, well, look, I don't know what to do. So if I just stick it in the right zone, maybe it'll get a deflection.
Something will stick.
Maybe someone will get on the end of it. But it's just, we had Uncle Sharma on the pod years ago, and he said with Spalletti, it was crossing, inshallah, and it felt like that again. Now, of course, Svilla had to make some big saves, and there were some big moments. But as you said, Roma were pretty comfortable. And again, on the break, they were the one that looked more likely to score. I think Dovbyk had a chance where he slashed at it, but he definitely should have scored. His first touch was amazing, by the way. Like, he really bought himself time, got his body position, but just snatched at the finish. I thought he should have done better there. But yeah, they always looked like they were going to get the second as opposed to Inter getting the one. But it's what we've seen over the past couple of games. This is now, 3-4 games without a win for Inter, 3 games without scoring.
Yep.
Like, it's been really, the writing's been on the wall. But for me, it is just the lack of depth, of quality in that team. Like, you can talk about, they've got numbers like, okay, Arnautovic has come in and he's done okay. Or you've got Carlos Augusto who comes in and does okay. But the drop-off in quality is just so severe.
Massive.
Like, Fratesi was just horrendous in this game. Like, Aslani never looks anywhere near it. So not only do Inter need to get the depth of the team, they need to, like, raise the floor of the squad.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sorry to keep referencing it back to Arsenal things, but, like, Arsenal this summer raised the floor of our squad. We didn't raise the top, we raised the floor with players like Calafiori and Marino and stuff, right? And I think Inter can need to do that same and be like, where are second choice right back, third choice right back starts for 13, 14 of the teams in this league, right? If you know what I mean, and just raising that level a little bit more. But obviously that costs a lot of money. And Inter don't really have that money. This Champions League run will help them financially, absolutely.
Sure.
If they get to the final and if they win it, even more so. But it feels like a squad that needs investment. And even when we talk about raising the floor of the squad, the best players in the squad are very old. Like, the average age of this squad, when you look at the key players, Çalhanoğlu or whether it's like
Cherby.
even... exactly. Cherby's like a lot of these players...
Historic.
a lot of these players are not like... They're in the twilight of their careers. So you're going to have to replace the peak of the squad as well. So I think, obviously, this is all just like kind of results-based analysis. But I think this Inter squad is going to have a big turnaround. I personally think they won't win the league this year now. The hope for them is that next year Napoli are going to have to actually deal with multiple competitions, and that will level the playing field a little bit more. Because before we talk about Napoli, yes, it massively helps that they've only had to play one game
massively.
a week. And when you're looking at Inter and how tired they are, you can see that's the difference, right?
Yeah, I think that's taken its toll, unfortunately. They've tried to be as competitive as they possibly could be across all of the kind of available tournaments, it's fair to say. And I did look at the fixture list. They've still got this Club World Cup to contend with later on after the end of this season. I can imagine a lot of those players will not be in the right frame of mood or, mentality to even try and entertain it. Like,
will they even be physically ready? Like, will they even be able to? Like,
I suspect there's some sort of agreement with FIFA potentially around the types of players that they play as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if they have to play some of their key star players for it. But yeah, I just, like you say, I think there's that sentiment of Napoli have had a fortuitous kind of build up in terms of fixtures, and that's something we'll allude to later. But you're right to allude to the fact that this does need some sort of level of investment. It needs upgrading in terms of squad. I think one of the things I wanted to allude to in terms of that Inzaghi conversation, though, is not necessarily about him being sacked, but do you feel that there's elements that you should be doing better with this level of squad, given the kind of levels across the kind of league itself? And do you maybe, and I think you alluded to it, it's the fact that they're playing a rigid style of football that they've been known and, brought into for a number of seasons. It feels like it needs evolving. It needs changing up. I think that's where my kind of criticism is not necessarily getting rid of Inzaghi. It's about whether his tactical scope needs to evolve a bit like when Fergie went through different assistants, etc. They found new ways of winning. Pep's doing it right now, potentially with Man City. I'm wondering if there's that sentiment now, and I'm not advocating for Inzaghi to be sacked, but there's some clip that I saw earlier today which kind of argued, and typically as a Juventus fan, so I took it with a pinch of salt, but the argument was that in his eyes that Inzaghi should be crowning, should be way ahead of any of the teams, which I don't agree with, because, Napoli, I think, are well drilled under Conte, and they've been really good this season, but they have their own separate issues themselves. So my point is, you've already pointed that, when it comes to wing backs, they didn't have a clue in this match. I've seen it in previous games, and we've alluded to the fact that there is that depth issue. But yeah, it feels like, personally, Rory, when Çalhanoğlu's not playing, they really do struggle. They really don't have a clue. If Acerbi's not at the back, they are leaky as hell. And up top, as you alluded to, if they don't have Lautaro Martinez or Marcus Thuram available, I don't know where goals come from. That seems to be the issue here.
But this is why I think Inzaghi's doing doing a really good job with that squad. I think if you look at the Inter starting 11 on a perfect day, no injuries, their best 11, that best 11 goes up against any team in the world for me.
Sure.
Right? They can beat any team on the day, absolutely. Now, obviously, every team, every manager has injuries. But I think injuries, especially towards the end of this season for Inter, have massively affected. I think we did see Inter evolving a little bit. I remember them watching them against Arsenal again and seeing just how well they restricted and controlled and were able to still get that win and we saw them be gritty. But then you see them come up against teams that they're expected to win and they'll come and play open, expansive football. So I think Inzaghi is more than capable of adapting and evolving. I think we've seen year on year this squad get better and better and better. But I think for them to reach the next stage, unfortunately, modern football all comes back to money. They need to spend money on this squad for him to be able to evolve to the next stage. If he wants a more vibrant attack, then he needs to go out and get it and get someone like, I don't know, plucking a name out of the air, but if you go and get an Orsolini, you say, right, we're going to have Orsolini, we're going to bring him in, that's going to cost us 40 million, but he's going to give us a completely different option off the bench, and it's going to evolve how we can play, give us another option. All of that costs money. If you're doing it on free transfers, which again, Inter usually nail. Their success rate on free transfers is very, very good. But then when your big one, like Taremi, doesn't work out, all of a sudden you've got nothing, right? So I think Inzaghi's doing a very, very good job. And to have them still in, or to have had them still in three competitions up until this week, and the favourites in two of them, even though I think they should probably be rated more in the Champions League than they are, even on this form. For them to be the favourites for two of them and for it to look like they could have gone and gotten both is actually a pretty good job. Now, obviously, most fans will just be upset that they might not win anything this year, and I can understand that completely. Trust me, Arsenal fans are in the same boat, but I think Inzaghi is doing as good a job as he can do. Again, when you're going up against a team that is led by Conte and they're playing one game a week. Because if Napoli are in the Champions League now, or if they're in the Champions League up until the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and they're still in the Coppa Italia, they're not on this run now. They're not getting the results they're getting. It's just not happening. So I think, I think all of that needs to be taken into account when you look at this league. And I know it's not much of a consolation, but I think it does need taken into account. But that being said, the performances haven't been good enough. The performances have been poor. The players did look completely lost and just... It wasn't good enough. That doesn't excuse the lack of quality that we saw on Sunday at times. But before we talk about Roma, we do need to talk about the referee has kind of been, he's been suspended.
Suspended, yeah.
Now, I saw this in real time and thought, well, they're going to look at that. There was the foul on Bissek in the area. I've not actually seen a replay back because even on the TV channel, they didn't show a replay. They just moved the game on. What did you think? At the time, I thought I had the TV on mute because me and the girlfriend were planning stuff and I had to kind of one eye on the game. But I thought they're going to go back and check that, and they just didn't. I was quite surprised that they didn't.
I was very surprised myself. I thought there's going to be something given now. There's got to be something given. And, Angelina's running down the other end and you're like, hang on, this can't be right. There's got to be something. Something's got to be given here. I'm surprised it hasn't been given, but I think obviously on the balance of it, Inter probably would say it's nothing necessarily just isolated to the referee, but that does seem a bit suspect that, after the game, we're having now the kind of official board say it would have been given as something. They would have given something. So this now kind of transpires to be much more of a bigger conspiracy theory than it potentially could have been. But this isn't just
I thought it was Marotta
exclusive.
League. I thought Marotta ran it all.
Exactly. He's the one that controls it, right? But ultimately, it's going to start kind of causing a bit of an issue, isn't it, now? And it wouldn't be Italian football without these controversies. That's the thing.
Without conspiracy theories, Italian football fans love conspiracy theories, and that's another one for him. But I thought it was like a Stonewall penalty. So he just runs straight through the back of him. I was like, well, there you go. Just blow your whistle now, right? obviously we're not saying there's anything, but it was just a very bizarre moment.
Yeah.
So I think Inter do have a fully valid right to be pissed off about that one and to wonder what the hell was happening there. But that being said, they did not make the most of their chances. A lot of their players were completely anonymous, and it was down to tiredness and lack of imagination, I think.
Yes, pretty much.
We do need to give quite a lot of credit to Roma. They're on this incredible run. I think their last loss was against Como in December, off the top of my head. Yep. Ranieri, of course, I think since he joined, Roma are top of the league in terms of the amount of points picked up. I think I saw that somewhere. A huge win a huge win for them at the San Siro, and Adam, they just played it absolutely perfectly, I thought.
Yeah.
A proper smash and grab, but they defended well, and on the counter they were unbelievable.
Yeah, and that has been pretty much, I would say, the style under Ranieri to an extent. You know, I think I alluded to it when we were talking about Inter perspective, but they weren't going to compete with Inter in terms of the way that they play it. But what they can do is, you know, really do things on the counter. And they've got the right kind of blend of players that can kind of help and assist that transition. I think also, though, Rory, for me, what stuck out was how important the central core of that Roma team were. So if you're looking from a backline perspective, you know, Ndicka, Mancini, Celik, for example, but also in that midfield, you know, the likes of a Cristante, I can't believe I'm saying this, Pellegrini and Kone. We love Kone on this podcast.
We do.
The latter two that I mentioned, probably not the kind of players you would have associated with being the core kind of contributors towards Roma's season, but in this particular match, they were really fundamental in terms of the way to approach. You know, they had to go deep. They had to like absorb it and get men behind the ball. And those players just knew what they had to do in terms of the roles. You know, they could formidably see opportunities out as well. And I think, you know, combine that with the wing play, which I think was really important for Roma's kind of way of winning in this particular match, but also Sfila, as I mentioned, really critical. But obviously, Sule was the key man. Sule was the man that we kind of alluded to in the previous game round against Juventus, where he kind of helped create those moments for them. And I think we're going to allude to it, but Shmorodov, your man, is another fantastic performance. Here. So you look across the board, Rory, and you say Roma on paper probably aren't the strongest, but they're playing so well as a team. And this is typified by that Ranieri kind of philosophy. You saw it at Calgary, you're seeing it now at Roma. He's instilled a confidence, and that's why they want to keep him on, because ultimately, if he was there at the beginning of the season, they're probably winning the Scudetto here, Rory.
It's incredible, the run of form he's on. And what I really like about Ranieri as well is that he matched Inter up. He went, right, 3-5-2, you play 3-5-2, we'll play 3-5-2. Against Lazio, he plays 4-2-3-1. Against Verona, he makes it a 3-4-3. Like, tactically, he's super versatile, and he's able to prepare for games prepare for games specifically. And obviously, you can argue about the difference between a 3-4-3 and a 3-5-2 if you want to, but him just adjusting the shape slightly and giving players the different roles, and those players, like you said, knowing exactly what to do, is just a sign of just incredible coaching and getting messages across very, very clearly, very effectively. Of course, I'm going to talk about Shmorodov. Every time he does something, I'm just like, my guy, come on. Like, you're proving me right. I'm delighted they offered him a new contract. He's going to be there for a while, but I genuinely think his hold-up play has been really impressive since he came into the first team a little bit more. His link-up play has been very good, and he's quite happy to not be the main guy. He just gets the ball, passes it on to someone else, and just plays his part. But we have to talk about Sule. Obviously, a huge goal against Lazio. Now a huge goal at the San Siro. It's taken him a while to kind of fill out this Roma shirt and make himself a player, but this is another moment and a beautiful finish through the legs of Sommer as well. Like, you can see the confidence flowing through him a little bit more. And next year, you're looking and going, okay, Roma have got potentially a game changer and a player that could replace Dybala potentially.
Yeah, 100%. I think the only worry I have is that whoever they bring in has to kind of maintain this style of football. It feels like they have to maintain what's been started by Ranieri, because I feel like if they dismantle this, they'll go back to square one again, where they're just kind of in that unknown, buying players to fill positions that they didn't really need, for example. And it's going to be a fascinating summer from a point of view of it'll be interesting to see who they can attract, who they can kind of bring in as players as well, because I think, there's certain players' contracts here that are still to be decided. I think there's rumours that the likes of Pellegrini will be let go in the summer, and Brian Cristante being potentially kind of earmarked as another one that might move on. But then you've got to replace those players. There's good experience there within that squad. So you're thinking that whoever you bring in has to step up. So it's going to be a fascinating summer. But equally, Ranieri, what a job. What an incredible job he's done.
It's unbelievable. And they now find themselves fully in the European race, complete turnaround. They'll be disappointed if they don't get Europa League at this rate, really. They're even pushing for Champions League. It is incredible, the turnaround. But if we look forward a little bit to next summer maybe and see what their options are, the managers that are currently being linked. So the two main candidates we have are, of course, Massimiliano Allegri, whose agent is working overtime trying to get him into another job because he's getting linked everywhere at the moment.
Yep.
And one that I think is a little bit more interesting in Pioli. I think maybe, even though I think he had a bit of a rough end at Milan and he's not the most exciting manager in the world, but I think Roma could do a lot worse than appointing him. Yep. He's someone who is tactically quite versatile. I think he's not married to one style. He's able to adjust. He's obviously won the Scudetto as well. Lots of experience. I'm taking him over Pioli if I'm a Roma fan. Like, what do you think? I'm taking him over Allegri, sorry, if I'm a Roma fan.
I've still heard some alternatives, which are the likes of Erik ten Hag, for example. I think they'd love to get Carlo Ancelotti, but I don't know if that's realistic as well. It's going to be a fascinating summer in terms of just understanding who it'll be, because I remember a few weeks back we were kind of maybe eyes lit up when Gasperini's name was kind of linked with the role as well. Again, could he be the person? I think there'll be a lot of noise about that particular appointment if it does happen. But for me, if it's between Allegri and Pioli, no kind of arguments. I'm with you. Pioli is the man. And he hasn't been the most aspiring towards the latter part of his time at Milan, but you can see since he left, actually, there was a few more cracks appearing. I think he kind of covered a lot of that and got the brunt of that kind of criticism. And I think he kind of covered it quite well. But arguably, this could be a nice little project for him. Someone or a club that he can build his reputation once again. And his style wasn't that bad. Actually, it was quite nice on the eye. And I think that's probably what will endure him to the Roma faithful as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right to point out the amount of errors and issues he was hiding behind him at Milan since he's left. It's all come crumbling down, hasn't it, really? So I think that would be I quite like that appointment, but I'm afraid they're just going to go for Allegri because he's won Scudetti, and Roma are going to be really, really boring to watch. But we will see how that progresses over the summer. Let's kind of look at the title race as we have it then, Adam, because obviously with Inter now, we're going to talk about Napoli shortly, but Inter's remaining fixtures, they have, obviously, they've got the Champions League midweek, which we're going to talk about later in the show. Then they have Verona at home, the second leg, Torino away, Lazio at home, and Como away. That is the last of their games. Lazio at home and Como away are two very tricky games to finish the season. Obviously, Como now safe, which is fantastic work from Cesc, but Como now safe. That's going to be a party atmosphere there. Those are two difficult last games for Inter, right? Verona, they have to beat. Like, there's no arguments about that one.
Yeah, I think you can kind of write off Verona and to a degree Torino, although Torino will not be straightforward. I don't think it'll be as easy as people maybe make out, But you're right to allude to Lazio. It's not going to be straightforward, because if Lazio are still trying to get into those European places by the end of it and maybe trying to cement maybe a chance of maybe getting into fifth or fourth spot by that point, then that won't be a straightforward game. And I can see Baroni really playing a tactical game again, like Ranieri has done here. But Como last day, do we think it's going to go to the last day? I mean, if it is feasibly still going to the last day, then yeah, it's not going to be easy because Como won't make it easy. I think Fabregas will know what's on the wall, and they've got some handy players. We've talked about Diao, his contribution, but it's across the board. Nico Paz as well, someone that's been linked with a move to Inter, ironically, in the summer. Could he be the man that destroys their chances? Ultimately, yeah, I think they've got the harder run in, Rory, and I can't see it. I think I'd be surprised if it gets to the Lazio game. Personally, I think it'll be potentially sewn up by then.
Yeah, it's not looking good for the Interisti. I apologise, Tommy. It's tough times, but hey, maybe we'll meet you in the Champions League final. That's all I can hope for, because there's a car drive down to Munich, which I'm personally looking forward to.